Hello everybody, welcome to this video. We're going to be talking about the quadratic formula today. Alright, so we're solving using the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is how you solve any quadratic equation. Any. As long as it's quadratic, you can use the quadratic formula to solve it. Now obviously there's other methods that are easier. Right? We've talked about solving by factoring. We've talked about solving by using square roots. There's another one called solving by completing the square. We're not going to go over that this year. We're not going to test it. I'm going to show you how to complete the square with a proof of how to find the quadratic formula. But other than that, we're not going to test it this year just for time's sake. Let's see. And then there's solving by graphing, which is what we'll do when we come back from break. But solving by using the quadratic formula is how you solve any quadratic equation. Right, so anything that has x squared in it and an equal sign equals to something, right? Anything like that where the degree is 2, right? Biggest exponent is a 2 of your variable. Use the quadratic formula, and it always works. So if you can't factor, quadratic formula, right? If you can't solve by square roots, quadratic formula. If you can't solve by completing the square, quadratic formula. If you don't have any technology with you, quadratic formula, right? And now this is a proof of it uses generalized variables, meaning we're going to use the generic quadratic form here: ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, and we're going to say that's equal to 0. Okay, because we want everything on one side, 0 on the other. Right? In order to solve a quadratic, we need it to be equal to 0. And now I'm going to, just by using this general form, right? This is the general form. Any number can be A, any can be B, and any number can be C. Right? So that's our general form. I'm going to complete the square. I'll show you how to do that. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but I'm going to show you the process. And then we'll work mostly with the quadratic formula in this video. So to complete the square. In order to complete the square, we need first, we're going to get everything on one side except for the constant. We're going to get the constant over on the other side. So we're going to subtract c from both sides. So ax squared plus bx equals negative c. Right? So we subtracted c from both sides. Now in order to complete the square, the leading coefficient must be a 1. Has to be a 1. So we're going to divide everything by a, because then these reduce, right? These reduce to 1. So I have x squared plus b over a, right? B divided by a times x equals negative c divided by a. Okay. And now we set it up. Now what we're going to do is a little side bit. The reason we're completing the square, why it's called completing the square, because I want x minus a number squared equals another number. Okay. So when I complete the square on this side, I want to be able to factor to a perfect square. Yeah, that's minus. Yeah. All right. So I want to be able to factor to a perfect square like this. That's why it's called completing the square, because we're taking something that's not squared, right? That's not a perfect square, and we're completing the perfect square to make it look like this when we factor. So how we do that is we take this middle term, so b over a, and we divide it by 2. Okay, we take that middle term, divide it by 2. There's a reason for that. Like I said, I'm sorry, we don't have time this year. I know probably a lot of you are really sad about that, right? But for now, if you want to, come talk to me after class. I can show you how to complete the square more formally. But for now, you're just going to have to trust me on this. Okay. So b over a divided by 2 is b over 2a. Okay, then to complete the square, we're going to square that. So we have b squared over 2a squared. Well, 2 squared is 4. A squared is a squared. We're going to take that and we're going to add it to both sides of the equation. So x squared plus b over a x plus b squared over 4a squared is equal to negative c over a plus b squared over 4a squared. Okay, so all I did was I did this little side bit, got my b squared over 4a squared and added to both sides. Right? We had to add it to both sides to make it equal, to keep it the same. Now this side will factor to a perfect square now. It'll factor to x plus b over a. Excuse me, not b over 2a. Ooh. B over 2a squared. And we have equals negative c over a plus b squared over 4a squared. Okay. They're coming and vacuuming. Let me lock the door real quick. Okay. I don't want them walking in on me. They probably will anyways. That's all right. Okay, now let's combine these fractions. So we need to get a common denominator. So let's see. I have negative c over a plus b squared over 4a squared. So if I multiply here by 4a, I'll have a common denominator. So I have negative 4ac over 4a squared plus b squared over 4a squared. So that is b squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. Okay, so here I have x plus b over 2a squared equals b squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. Okay, to undo a square, you take a square root. So I'm going to square root both sides. Now remember, whenever you take a square root, you got to add your plus or minus when you enact the square root. So now I have x plus b over 2a equals plus or minus. Now we can separate these, right? So we have the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and the square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of a squared is just a. Okay, now I'm going to subtract b over 2a from both sides, so x equals negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. These have a common denominator, so I can add those together. So I have x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. And that right there is your quadratic formula. We wanted to get x by itself, right? That's how we solve. We want x by itself. We want x equals something. Okay, and we have it right here. In fact, we even have our two answers, right? This is a quadratic, degree 2, so we should get two answers. Well, it's plus or minus, right? We have a positive or a negative, so two answers. And this is our quadratic formula. Okay, so I'm going to write that. That's what we're going to focus on mostly. So I'm going to rewrite it up here. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's the quadratic formula. You'll need to commit that to memory. Okay, an easy way to do it, and we'll probably do this in class, is there's a song. Okay, it's to the tune "Pop Goes the Weasel." I'll sing it for you. So it goes. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, got a little stuffy nose, so that's why I'm singing bad. Not just because I'm a bad singer, it's because I got a stuffy nose, right? Let's do it again. Pop goes the weasel. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, one more time. All right, third time's charm. Is this fun? I learned the quadratic formula this way by singing it, right? And honestly, even though by now, like I work with it enough as a math teacher that it's just kind of second nature. Every time I write it down, that's what goes through my head is that song, right? It's that tune, right? I don't have to sing the actual letters or the variables and numbers now because it's become second nature. I've worked with it so much. But the tune still goes through my head as I write it, right? And I kind of write it a little bouncy like that. So, okay, let's do it again. How goes weasel? x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, and that's going to help you because unless you're going to do completing the square proof, then you're going to have to memorize that. Right, and putting a song to it really helps you memorize. Right, think about it. Right, think about how many songs are on your phone or on your Spotify account or something like that. Think of how many songs you have, and then think about how many things you have memorized. Right, you have all of the songs memorized on your phone, but you don't have the phone numbers memorized on your phone. Right, and there's way more songs on your phone than there's phone numbers. Right, so it's pretty crazy that way how it's set up like that. Okay, give me 1 second. Someone's knocking at the door. Hopefully this won't take long.
Dude, I'm making a video. Yeah. Do you need somewhere to sit? You can come in and just hang out. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't know.
You're good.
You start?
Huh?
You have to start?
No, it's going right now. Okay.
Give me like comedy sketch.
Yeah.
Oh man, sorry about that. What did I say? Oh yeah. So think about how many songs you have memorized. You know all the words too, and right, you can sing as loud as your heart desires in your car or whatever. And then think about how many phone numbers you have memorized. Not many, right? It's because songs are much easier to memorize, right? It puts a tune to it. I don't know all the physiology behind it and all the neuroscience behind it. It's just I know that it's easier to learn a song, right, or to memorize a song than memorize other things. Okay, so hopefully that'll help put it into a song, help you memorize it. All right. So once again, all these letters come from the generic quadratic equation. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Right. All right. So we're going to skip over this factoring part. We reviewed factoring last week. Last year I did this in a different order, and I honestly didn't have time to do a whole bunch of editing this year, as you know. So we're going to skip this factoring part. Use it if you need a refresher from even last week, right, in quarter 1. But we're going to do the quadratic formula. So we're going to solve, let's see here. We're going to solve 21x squared plus 43x minus 14 equals 0. We're going to solve that. So here, a is our leading coefficient, so a is 21. B is the linear term, or the middle, so it's 43. And c is the constant, or the last number, so negative 14. Right? And now I just plug in all these numbers in for these letters up here. So I got x equals negative b, so negative 43, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 43 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 21, times c, which is negative 14, all over or divided by 2 times a, which is 21. Okay? And now it's just simplifying, which you all know how to do. Right? The hardest part is remembering the formula. That's the hardest part. After that, it's just simplifying. So let's see here. Negative 43 plus or minus the square root. 43 squared is 1,849. Okay, and then negative 4 times 21 times negative 14 is positive 1,176 divided by 2 times 21, which is 42.
Interruption.
Sorry.
Mr. Bauer, if you're still on campus, please call the main office. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. A lot of interruptions today. I'm sorry. So then we simplify some more. Negative 43 plus or minus the square root. 1,849 plus 1,176. That is 3,025 divided by 42. Obviously, you can use your calculator to do a lot of this. Let's see. So then we have negative 43 plus or minus the square root of 3,025 is 55 over 42. Okay, now we have our plus or minus. So we have negative 43 plus 55 over 42, or negative 43 minus 55 over 42. Well, negative 43 plus 55, let's see, that is 12 over 42, or negative 43 minus 55, what do I have it as? That should be negative 98, not positive 98 on your paper. So negative 98 over 42. So let's see, divide numerator, denominator by 6 here. And divide numerator and denominator by, what is that? 14 here. So I get x equals 2 over 7, and x equals negative 7 over 3. And there's your two answers. Right? So, like I said, quadratic formula always works. It's just a little bit extra here. Let's go on to the back side of the paper. We'll do some more practice here. All right, we got 3 more to do here. Let me leave this up here. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So let's see, we have 3x squared plus x minus 10 equals 0. Okay. Quadratic formula, we have a equals 3, right? It's our leading coefficient. B equals 1, right? This is 1x. And c equals negative 10. So x equals negative 1, right? Negative b. So negative 1 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 1 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is negative 10, all over 2 times a, which is 3. Okay, we'll simplify a little bit. So let's see, negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared, which is 1. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. Negative 12 times negative 10 is positive 120. Over 2 times 3 is 6. And then we have negative 1 plus or minus the square root. 1 plus 120 is 121 over 6. And then negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 121 is 11 over 6. And then we have negative 1 plus 11 over 6, or negative 1 minus 11 over 6. So this one, negative 1 plus 11, is 10 over 6. And then negative 1 minus 11 is negative 12 over 6. So x equals 10 over 6. We can divide numerator denominator by 2. So you get 5/3. And we have this one over here, negative 12 divided by 6 is negative 2. And there's your two answers. Okay. Let's do the next one together. Let's see, x squared minus 6x plus 5 equals 0. So here A is equal to 1, right? Leading coefficient of 1. B is equal to negative 6, and C is equal to 5. So our formula, x equals negative b. So negative 6 plus or minus the square root of b squared. So negative 6 squared. Now if you type in minus 6 and then the squared sign on your calculator, you're going to get negative 36 because your calculator does PEMDAS, where you didn't do PEMDAS. Right? If your calculator reads this is negative 1 times 6. So it's going to do the exponent first in PEMDAS. So it's going to do 6 squared, which is 36, and then tack on the negative. So you need to write it with parentheses. Right? It's negative 6 quantity squared. Minus 4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is 5, all over 2 times A, which is 1. A is 1. Let's do some simplifying. So a negative 6 is a positive 6. Negative 6 squared is 36. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Times 5 is negative 20. And then 2 times 1 is 2. And then we have 6 plus or minus the square root. 36 minus 20 is 16 over 2. Sorry, they're vacuuming around outside. I don't know if you can hear that. I don't know what's going on today. Everyone and their dog is trying to interrupt me today. So I apologize. But I have to get this done today because last week they kicked us out before I was able to get my videos. They didn't tell us, right? So I wasn't able to plan my videos. So I got to do it today. I apologize. 6 plus or minus the square root of 16 is 4 over 2. So we have 6 plus 4 over 2, or 6 minus 4 over 2. Well, 6 plus 4 is 10 over 2, or 6 minus 4 is 2 over 2. So x equals 10 divided by 2 is 5, and x equals 2 divided by 2 is 1. Right, so 5 and 1. Those are your answers. All right. Let's do the next one. Let's see, we have 4x squared minus 4x equals negative 1. Now remember, when we're solving quadratics, everything on one side, 0 on the other. So I need to add 1 to both sides to get 0 on the other side. So here I have 4x squared minus 4x plus 1 equals 0 now. All right? So now I have a is equal to 4, right? The first number, the leading coefficient, excuse me. B is equal to negative 4, and C is equal to positive 1. So then we have x equals negative b, so negative 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 4 quantity squared, minus 4 times a, which is 4, times c, which is 1, all over 2 times a, so 2 times 4. Okay, a negative and a negative is a positive, so we got positive 4 plus or minus the square root. Negative 4 squared is 16. Negative 4 times 4 is negative 16, times 1 is negative 16. All over 8. All right, 2 times 4. And then we have 4 plus or minus the square root. 16 minus 16 is 0 over 8. The square root of 0 is 0. So then I have 4 plus 0 over 8, or 4 minus 0 over 8. 4 plus 0 is 4 over 8. 4 minus 0 is 4 over 8. So x equals 1/2. Right? It's two answers because we get plus or minus 0. They just happen to simplify down to the same number. But there was two answers. Right? Plus or minus 0 here. Okay. Now all of these you could have factored. Right? We're just practicing the quadratic formula. We could have factored these. Right? That's why we got nice numbers out. We got nice little fractions and integers out. Right? The reason we got those out is because you actually could have factored, and it's probably faster factoring. But I'm going to give you one that we can't factor. We have negative 3x squared plus 2x plus 7 equals 0. If you try to factor that, you can't. Right? If we do a times c, so negative 3 times 7 equals negative 21. Two numbers that multiply negative 21 that add to 2. Let's see, 1 and 21, 3 and 7. None of those add to 2. Can't factor it. So we need the quadratic formula. So let's see. A is equal to negative 3, B is equal to 2, and C is equal to positive 7. So x equals negative b, so negative 2, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 2 squared, minus 4 times a, which is negative 3, times c, which is 7, all over 2 times a, which is negative 3. Let's simplify. So we have negative 2 plus or minus the square root. 2 squared is 4. Let's see here. 7 times negative 3 is negative 21. Times negative 4 is positive 84. So plus 84. All over 2 times negative 3, which is negative 6. And then we have negative 2 plus or minus the square root. 4 plus 84 is 88 over negative 6. What number times itself is 88? There isn't one. Right? So we're actually going to have a square root in our answer. Right? We can simplify the square root, but we're going to have a square root in the answer. So let's simplify the square root of 88. 88 is 2 times 44. 44 is 2 times 22. 22 is 2 times 11. It's a square root, so we want groups of 2 of the same number. So this 2 and this 11 are left over. So 1, 2 comes outside, and a 2 times 11 is left inside. So then this is negative 2 plus or minus 2 square root of 22 over negative 6. Right? I can divide the numerator and denominator by 2. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is 1, so square root of 22. Right? This is multiply, this is divide, so they undo each other. Negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. This equals x. That's your answer. Okay, no more. You can't simplify from there. Now you can see why we couldn't factor. How the heck are you going to factor this to get you that without just knowing you need the square root of 22? You can't. Right? And that's why we need the quadratic formula. Because sometimes things aren't nice. Right? They're not nice integers or rational numbers. These are two answers. Right? It's 1 plus square root of 22 over negative 3, and it's 1 minus square root of 22 over negative 3. So two different answers. But you don't need to write both of them. Just leave it like this because I get the plus or minus here. Okay. So just simplify as far as you can, then don't simplify any further. Because you can. Right? Okay. Let's see here. So just a little definition here. This part, what's underneath the square root, so the b squared minus 4ac, this is called the discriminant. Right, it's called the discriminant. Essentially, it tells you if you're going to get an integer, if you're going to get a irrational number, so like a square root that doesn't simplify, or if you're going to get an imaginary number. All right, so if this right here is greater than 0, right, then you're going to get two real answers. It's either going to be an integer or an irrational number, depends on what it simplifies down to. If it is equal to 0, well, if that's is equal to 0, what's the square root of 0 is 0, so you're actually going to get one answer. You're going to get two answers that simplify down to one answer. Okay, and if it is less than 0, that means you have a negative number inside here, so you're going to get an imaginary. So if it's less than 0, I'm going to put capital D for discriminant. Then you get two real answers. If it's equal to 0, you get one real. And if it's less than 0, then you get two imaginary, because you can't take the square root of a negative, so you have to factor out the imaginary unit I. Okay. In normals we do a lot with this. For this year, this is just helping you to maybe see a pattern and simplify correctly. Okay. So we've got three more examples. Let's do together, and then we'll be done with the video. Okay. That's taking longer than I thought it would. So let's see here. Negative x squared plus 4x minus 4 equals 0. So here a is equal to negative 1, b is equal to 4, and c is equal to negative 4. So x equals plus or, come on, that's my fault. X equals negative b, so negative 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So simplify, negative 4 plus or minus 4 squared is 16. Negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4, times negative 4 is negative 16. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. 16 minus 16 is 0. The square root of 0 is 0. Negative 4 plus 0 over negative 2, or negative 4 minus 0 over negative 2. So then you get negative 4 over negative 2, or negative 4 over negative 2. So x equals positive 2. Okay. Let's see here. 6x squared plus 2x equals negative 1. We need everything on one side, 0 on the other, so I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So here the a is equal to 6, b is equal to 2, c is equal to 1. So x equals negative b, so negative 2, plus or minus the square root of b squared, 2 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 6, times c, which is 1, all over 2 times a, which is 6. Simplify. Negative 2 plus or minus the square root. 2 squared is 4. Negative 4 times 6 is negative 24, times 1 is negative 24 over 12. So we have negative 2 plus or minus the square root. 4 minus 24 is negative 20 over 12. Can't take the square root of a negative, so we have to factor out the imaginary unit I. So I have factor out the I, and now I have square root of positive 20. Square root of 20 is 2 times 10, and 10 is 2 times 5. Group of 2 of the same number, 5 is left over. So this is the same as 2 square root of 5. So this is negative 2 plus or minus 2I square root of 5 over 12. We can divide numerator and denominator by 2. So negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Positive 2, right? So this is 2 times, and this is divided by 2, so they undo each other. So I square root of 5 over 12 divided by 2, which is 6. And there's your answer. Here we go. One more for you. One half x squared equals 7x minus 1. We need everything on one side, 0 on the other, so I'm going to subtract 7x and add 1 for both sides. So 1 half x squared minus 7x plus 1 equals 0. So here a is equal to 1 half, b is equal to negative 7, c is equal to 1. So x equals negative b, so negative 7, plus or minus the square root of b squared, negative 7 squared, minus 4 times a, 1 half, times c, which is 1, all over 2 times a, which is 1 half. So a negative and a negative is a positive, so 7 plus or minus the square root. Negative 7 squared is positive 49. Negative 4 times 1 half is negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. 2 times 1 half is 1. So then we have 7 plus or minus the square root. 49 minus 2 is 47. Anything divided by 1 is itself. Can't simplify the square root of 47, so that's it. There's your answer. Okay. That's it for this video. Once again, the only new thing that we've covered today is the quadratic formula. Everything else is simplifying that you've done at one point or another in your life. Okay, we just got done simplifying tons of square roots, like all quarter long. You know how to multiply, you know how to divide, you know how to simplify fractions. You've been doing that since elementary school. So the only thing new we've added is quadratic formula. All right, so I know this looks complicated. Okay, don't look at the big picture. Just do step by step. Follow the process. I promise you can do it. I promise you can do it. As always, let me know if there's anything I can do to help you out. I'm here after school every day.